CEO Andrew Leslie. We're also joined by Chris Cooter and Chris Bracewell. They are two of the assessors for this. I'm going to hand over to Andrew Leslie now. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thanks, Tommy. Well, welcome everybody to this session. We've had a series of questions in that Tommy will go through. We've got 8 questions, in fact, that we'll address before we get to the live questions introduced by the attendees today. Joined today by Chris Cooter and Chris Bracewell, who are both assessors to the scheme. So as assessors, they have made applications and been through the application process successfully in relation to general PDBR categories and also HRBs. Chris Bracewell worked very closely with myself, Sam Allwinkle, and others in the competence scheme development phase, and was largely not responsible, but a major contributor to looking at the application form and converting it, if you like, from the standard APS wording into the language of PAS 8671. So the competence scheme is based around PAS 8671, and you'll find all of the information on or via the homepage in the APS website. So that's probably enough by way of introduction, and it's over to Tommy to start us off with the questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrew. So the first question is just going to go into the chat now. These are all questions that we've had from APS members or people interested in the PDBR register. So question 1, what is the current pass rate percentage-wise for attaining successful registration at the first attempt?
Well, the answer to that is that everyone who is currently on the register, and that's a question that's coming up, numbers, everybody that's currently on the register has got onto the register first time. So the pass rate at the moment is 100%.
That's what we all like to hear. Okay, question 2. The application form asks for an extensive amount of information, especially evidence. Can this be reduced?
Well, I'll pass over to Chris in a second, but what we've done in response to feedback is we have introduced into the guidance an additional paragraph which basically addresses this question. What we're saying is that the evidence that is required with the application is evidence that supports the statements that are made in the 4 sections relating to PAS 8671. I think that basically that suggests that it isn't necessary to have evidence against each and every one of the questions in the form. The importance of the evidence is to show the breadth of experience and knowledge on the subject, and to be able to support what is said in the narrative statements. Now, the narrative by each applicant will depend on, or what people say will depend on the type of work that they do, the size of project, the building typologies, and so on and so forth. And so what the evidence is required is evidence to support these statements. Can I go ask Chris Bracewell to come in there, because Chris, you would put these questions in line with the PAS.
Well, yes. I think part of the question here is, can it be reduced? And the short answer to that is no, because the categories that are in, I think it's part 4A of the form, have come directly from PAS 8671. As Andrew says, I was a contributor to this, and over on the right-hand side between us, we have developed a list of what we think is suitable evidence to demonstrate compliance. There are certainly other ways to do it. And what I can tell you is that, and Andrew's just said that all of the people who are now involved as assessors have been through the process, and it is a time-consuming process. There's just unfortunately no way around it.
Thanks, Chris. Chris Cooter, have you anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, I've done an assessment already on that, and the evidence that was provided was really did demonstrate the what we were looking for, and it wasn't a vast amount of evidence that the person actually put in. So no, I think we've hit it on the right level now.
Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Andrews and Chris's. We're going to go on to question 3 now. Questions there. So question 3 is, the application form requests an extensive amount of information, as we've just discussed. Why is there an interview as well? I understand proving competence has to be a rigorous process, but why can't there be 3 options available? For example, 1, a basic application interview, or 2, long application, or 3, online exam.
I'll take a bit of that. There is no requirement in the competency scheme for an exam. What we're looking for is evidence of doing the work. I'll ask Chris Bracewell to explain why we have included an interview and how important it is.
Yes, part of the reason for the interview is that when we discussed this, we found it fairly easy to find examples of skills, knowledge, and experience. But the final bit of competence is behaviour. And I think it's very, very difficult to test behaviour without actually having an interview that re-examines and revisits the SKE bit.
Thanks, Chris. Chris?
Yep. With the interview, what usually happens is that there'll be perhaps some evidence that is not quite sufficient, and then we can, during the interview, tease out more information around that evidence, which makes it a lot easier. So there's not the need to request further information and have that going around trying to wait for evidence to come in, where we can discuss the evidence that's been provided, and where there's a shortfall in that evidence, we can ask questions around that and then move on from there. So the interview is extremely important.
I agree with that. I see similarities with how you would go about employing a person for your business. You always carry out an interview, because looking somebody in the white of their eyes, so to speak, you get a fairly good indication of the character. Chris Bracewell has mentioned behaviours, about the validity of what they're stating as their own evidence. So I think the interview is very important. In the early parts of the development of the scheme, what we decided was that the 2 key parts of the process were the narrative and the interview. The evidence supported the narrative, and the interview would test any aspects of what was presented by way of evidence by the assessor speaking directly to the applicant. As far as online exams or exams are concerned, I know that the RIBA scheme has a course that applicants to their scheme take and pass before they become eligible. We have said from the outset that what we are expecting from applicants is that they are doing the work, and a lot of the knowledge and experience that they have built up is from actually doing work in relation to building regulations and building control application and sign-off processes. And therefore, this is something that is learned rather than can be taught at a course. A lot of applicants will have been dealing with building control for most of their careers, one way or another. And there are exams, there are courses available, CABE do them, LABC do them, but we don't see that as being necessarily part of how to demonstrate competence to our assessors as part of this scheme.
Yes, I could come in there, Andrew, if I may. I can tell people here that I've actually engaged with the RIBA scheme as well, and I did the online exam, but then there was something very, very similar to the way that APS do it, setting out basically my skills, knowledge and experience in a written document, and then there was an interview. My personal opinion is that the exam was of little value.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you ever so much, everyone. Just a very polite reminder, please put questions in the Q&A. It makes editing a lot easier. I'm also looking at 2 different screens at the moment, so your question will get missed if it's in the chat. Please put questions in the Q&A, or we'll have to delete them from the chat. Question 4. Will there be a requirement to undertake specific BSA CPD and/or to undertake an annual refresher test or exam to retain registration?
The first part of that question we covered just a couple of minutes ago. The answer is no. There's no particular requirement to undertake a course in order to be a successful applicant. There's no harm, of course, in attending any of the APS accredited courses relating to the Building Safety Act. There is no specific course at the moment in relation to building regulations in England, although this is on the cards. Just exactly how and when that becomes available is still being developed. So there will be an announcement in due course, but that will be a course that provides information about building control, about the building regulations, but it won't be mandatory to attend that course in order to make an application to the scheme. The second part of the question, yes, competence will be reviewed every 3 years, and that won't be a full-blown application. It will be a review probably comprising an update statement by the person on the register and a short interview. Chris B and Chris C, have you anything to add to that?
Just that CPD is a requirement of our professional bodies, and if you're carrying out that role, then you need to do whatever CPD is available within your own practices or from an external source.
So again, the build up to this register and the CPD that has been available through AP has been excellent, and I'm sure that Andrew and Mark, our president, will continue the excellent work that they have been doing, and we'll look at that particular area of CPD.
Thank you ever so much. I feel like I'm in University Challenge at the moment. APS, Kuta. Right, question 5. We act as principal contractor and are often required to take on the role of principal designer. Are the APS going to develop a separate training program so it is possible to evidence competency via this and then be able to formally register? If not, what training program would you suggest as an individual could be undertaken to achieve accreditation?
I'm just wondering about this question. Is it asking, is there going to be a principal contractor register? I'm not quite clear.
I think it is. Yes, I looked at this question, Andrew. And what we're talking about here today is our register, which is PAS 8671. There is, of course, the equivalent, which is the PAS 8672, and of course the third one, 873, which is the competence of people who manage the building. We aren't currently doing a course for PAS 8672. There is the possibility, and I'm suggesting this, that you might look at somewhere like Construction Line, if you're a member of Construction Line. Certainly in the past, they've done accreditation against many safety schemes in procurement, and maybe that's where you could look.
Thank you ever so much. We'll move on to question 6. Question 6 is coming through. If you pay the fees and submit your application, if you fall short, do you have to pay the full amount again or agree a plan to get you to the required level?
I think it's the latter. I mean, the process, well, let me start from square one, I suppose. We would expect applicants who are applying to a competence scheme to be competent at putting forward the information. The level of failure, if there is a level of failure, would be insufficient evidence supplied. And the assessor would assist the applicant through that process. And I'm not entirely sure that applicants are going to fall short. What we are finding with the applications that are currently being considered is some applicants aren't fully understanding what is required by way of application, which is why we've put a clarification into the guidance to help with that situation. But really, the application form itself is pretty much self-explanatory. It follows the same sort of format as our corporate membership and our CMAPS application forms. And we very rarely find that people fall short. So I would suspect that anyone who is making an application and there is information required, the assessor will assist them to provide additional evidence. Chris, I see you're nodding there. So,
yeah. The way it works is that we go through the evidence together during the interview, and we then discuss what further evidence is required, and that is sent direct back to the assessor, and I review that again, and then we clear the application, and that evidence and the application then gets sent through to the APS for them. It's quite a straightforward process, and it works well in the other assessments that I do. Never seem to have had any problems with that area.
Yes, I think we've explained that, given an answer to most of the question, but I think the important part for the question is would that person, if they fell short, which again you've explained very clearly that that's unlikely, would they have to pay the application fee again? Andrew?
I don't think we, as a working group, I don't think we've considered that. I think we'll need to take that on board and advise accordingly. I suspect that because the application fee is stage one is non-returnable. It's non-returnable because of the work that the assessors have to do to get to the point that there's either a green light or a amber light or a red light. Let us take that on board, and the working group will have a discussion about that, and we'll make an announcement in the guidance as an update.
Okay.
Thank you ever so much. So we're going to go on to a couple more questions that have just come in. We've got quite a few questions in the Q&A, so we're going to hit them now. So question 7. How many people are on the register or have applied and paid the fee? How many members in total of the APS as a percentage? I think only Andrew will have the answer to this.
Yes, there are 7 people on the register at the moment, having gone through the process, and there's we know that there's another 4 or 5 in the pipeline being assessed. The progress of receiving applications is more or less as we expected, because potential applicants have a bit of preparation work to do to get the evidence together. So we weren't expecting an avalanche. We were expecting more of a steady flow. Hopefully after this particular webinar, we've persuaded 1 or 2 of you listening to us that it's worthwhile making an application.
Thank you.
Well, just to the second part of that, how many applicants are members of APS? I couldn't tell you at the moment, because that's not a stat we've been looking at. The relationship between being on the register and membership is that people on the register are held in a separate register. The register is open to members of APS and to non-members. The whole idea of the scheme is to open it to the industry, not specifically to APS members, although APS members are expected, if they want to take up the PD building regulations role, to apply. But this is an open register, unlike the other registers that we know about, which are RIBA and CEAT, that their registers are open only to their own members. I think once we get to a stage of having a significant number on the register, it might well be interesting to look at the stats, how many members are how many registrants are actually members of APS. So we're keeping 2 sets of registers. One is for those members of APS who've gone through a competence assessment in relation to CDM. They become members depending on the level that they apply for and the amount of information they provide with the application. The PD Building Regulations Register is a standalone register where if non-members apply, and we have had non-members applying, I do know that much, those non-members will be invited to join APS. Members who are on the PDBR Register do not receive APS membership benefits. Only APS members receive benefits. And so obviously one of the things that we want to do with an open register is demonstrate to the people on the register that there is value to them in becoming an APS member. And this is part of the APS strategy. We are not the association for principal designers CDM. It's a much wider remit that the APS has. So we're looking at health, safety, risk management, and that includes risk management throughout the design process. So we're very keen, and on that point, and our webinar series that are put together by Tommy and hosted by Tommy cover much more than the CDM and related subject matter. We cover subjects of interest across a broad spectrum, and that those interests will be of value to designers who are members of professional bodies, design bodies like architects and technologists and engineers. We do cover a lot of CDM subjects as well, which are of interest to those who are in business as health and safety consultants or CDM consultants and so on. So a very broad spectrum of subject matter are presented, and that is why we have opened the register to the wider industry. Sorry, that was a long answer. But,
That was a bit, Andrew, to be honest with you. It rattled on a little bit. just so you don't continue this trend of rattling on, we have 22 questions to get through now. So the audience has definitely woken up. Thank you ever so much, everyone. I really appreciate that. And I'm just going to jump in, and if we could get answers, I don't want to use the term quick fire. Yeah. So question 8. Question 8. This is for individuals. Will there be a company register like the corporate APS membership?
It's under consideration and being developed at the moment. Some of you who are attending here will have attended a webinar delivered by Mark Snelling and myself on organizational capability. So the answer to the question is there is likely to be a register relating to organizational capability.
Thank you so much. Question 9. We've been asked who should be primary PDBR and design and build projects. BSA and PAS 8671 requires a lead designer to be PDBR. Client wants the main contractor to be PDBR. Third-party PDBR can only provide PDBR advisory role. Said it 5 times. Are APS assessors considered to be designers to comply with BSA?
I'll pass this over to our assessors, but can I just make a very important clarification? We're talking about compliance here with the building regulations. Now, the building regulations developed in response to the Building Safety Act, but please always refer to the role of principal designer building regulations is related to the building regulations. Chris, C, I see you've got your mute off. So would you like to have a go at the question?
No, that's quite a different question. There is, for the assessors, for us, we've not had the requirement to be a designer. We need to have the knowledge and the skills of where to go and find the information that's required. And that's the way we're managing the assessments on that rate. I hope that helps.
The question of PDBR on design and build has come up a couple of times, and there's nothing that we can see that prevents a principal contractor employing somebody to provide them with the expertise to deliver the PD building the principal designer role. It's not something that we would necessarily recommend. It's not something that is absolutely clear in the regulations. If what I could do is, as I've put together with Mark Snelling, a response to that particular question, I can give that response to Tommy, and maybe Tommy, you could make that available.
I'll sure do that. I'm also going to put the definition of quickfire into the webinar chat. Question 10. If applicable, can the same evidence be used more than once?
I think you've answered that earlier, Andrew, haven't you?
I believe so.
Yeah, it is that in your latest amendment to the guidance, the overuse of the same evidence wouldn't go down well with the assessor.
It depends on the evidence provided. If it's, say, example, a tracker or something like that, where within that tracker there's evidence of different parts of the question we require, then yes, that evidence could be used, but it has to be specific to the question that's being asked for to be provided. Hope that helps.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much. I appreciate that. Question 11. With respect to guidance of evidence required, there is reference to processes from BSA that none of will have done yet. None of will. Completion certificate process. How are you going to assess competence against these items? Struggling to get my head around that grammatically.
Yes.
I think I understand. Where we've not, that has not happened in a project that the person being assessed is working on, or what we would look for there, or what I would look for there, is the process behind doing that. How is that dealt with, and how is it managed, and so forth. And that is where earlier on we were talking about the interview. So that would be an interview issue where we would go through that and then work out whether it was compliant or not.
Thank you ever so much. For question 12, and we're starting on the Q&A that have come in from now. So this was sent 5 minutes into the webinar, so we've got quite a few to get through. I'm just going to crack on. So question 12, how many of the PAS applications actually have a design qualification or a BC qualification?
We haven't done the stats on that.
Completely fair, that makes sense. So question 13, are there any examples of successful or unsuccessful PAS submissions that can be referred to help prepare for a submission?
I would say no, mainly because of confidentiality and the everything that goes around that. We can give examples of, for example, somebody put in a matrix of their competence where it showed what competence they had against the specific requirements. So that was quite a good single page document which had a lot of evidence in it.
Thank you. I believe, Andrew, we were discussing potentially doing some sort of assistance with this.
Yes, we began to look at the possibility of a mock-up response. But as Chris has just mentioned, the aspects of confidentiality are difficult to overcome. So we've started work on that. It's not complete, and that's the current state of play.
Thank you ever so much, everyone. Question 14. PAS 8671 states, assessment carried out by third parties using BSN ISO/IEC 17024 is best practice. Does the APS PD register have this?
Chris B, do you have a response as our PAS 8671 expert? Sorry, I landed you in it there.
That's a question I don't have an immediate answer to. Certainly, we look very, very closely at the requirements of PAS 8671. The application form is formatted to reflect all of the categories that were on PAS 8671. But whether we look specifically at that BS, I don't think we did. But it's a good question, and I think again it's something that we ought to look at and go back to people.
Thanks, Chris. In fact, Mark Snelling and I had a look at that standard very early on in our discussions around the Building Safety Act and competence. But as Chris B has just said, what we have done is followed the PAS.
Thank you ever so much. For question 15, what is the process if applicants are unsuccessful with their submission? I know we did just touch on this, but it was more about fees. This question is, how many bites of the cherry will they get for their fee? So how many attempts?
That hasn't really been considered because it's not been an issue. But as I said in response to an earlier question, we'll take that one on board, and the working group will discuss that and issue some words in the revised guidance.
Thank you ever so much. Question 16. Everyone speaking seems confident in the approach the APS are taking, which is fair. But will the process for registering be under review to ensure it is suitable? And if so, what form will that review take?
Well, the scheme is under constant review because with the applications coming in and with the work being done by the assessors, we share the experiences between ourselves, and we have already made modifications to the application form and to the guidance. And so that will be a if you like, a learning process for us. And we will continue to refine the scheme as required over the initial period that the register is up and running.
Thank you so much. Question 17. Are there various positions or competence levels on the register? For example, if you work on domestic-based projects or commercial-based, but do not work on projects such as high-risk or high-rise buildings?
Yes.
I'll
Sorry, Chris.
Yes, I'll answer that. Yeah. There are two levels. There is a general level, which is the word that we use for every project other than high-risk buildings, which for those who would like to know what a high-risk building is, it's a building that has 2 residential units. It also has to have a floor that exceeds 18 meters from the ground. So that the general category of the APS register covers everything apart from that. The higher level, on the higher risk level, requires additional evidence to demonstrate your competence to deal with buildings of those types.
Yep. Thanks, Chris. Now, the application form asks the applicant to advise the building typologies that they have experience in working within. And so that will be in terms of general buildings that you could have, housing, care homes, industrial projects, and so on. And the expectation is you'll provide evidence to demonstrate experience in those typologies. That isn't a block to adding new types of work to your portfolio, but we would expect that if, for example, you haven't done work on industrial projects before, but you've been doing housing, you would let the APS know that you had added that typology, and that would result in a very light touch review with the applicant of where they think that can be added to the process. So in the register, we've just concluded how the register will be set out. The typologies that you have included in the application form will be listed in either the general category or the general and high risk category, as you have declared in your application form, so that a client will look at the register, or anyone interested in evidencing your competence will look at the register and see what categories, what building typologies you have included in your application.
Thank you ever so much. I believe the building next door is doing a fire evacuation, so we may have to cut this short. Question 18. In the guidance of evidence required column, there is reference to processes for Gateway 2 that none of us will have yet carried out, e.g. completion certification process, notifiable changes, etc. How are assessing people against these matters? Or how are you assessing people against these matters?
Well, I agree that Gateway 3 hasn't gone, but Gateway 2 is current, and it is possible to make a Gateway 2 application, and I can add that I'm personally involved in doing them.
I think
Fantastic.
we did mention this earlier on regarding the evidence and the process to achieve those stages.
Brilliant. I'm going to go on to question 19 now. Question 19. What is the current timescale for a decision once the application is submitted? Will there be a CAP for the register?
The time scale is in the guidance. I think it's 6 weeks. I need to double check, but it's in the guidance.
I do apologise, James. I read it out wrong. Will there be a cap for the register?
I don't understand what that question is asking for.
I assume that if you were asking if there was a cap to something, you'd be asking, will there only be 100 spaces on the register? Yep. Thank you, James, for that enthusiastic capital letters. Yes. So is this a limited number of people on the register?
No.
Fantastic. So it's there's no cap, which is brilliant. Should I move on to the next question, everyone?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I think Chris.
Question.
Hang on, Tommy. Chris Bracewell is talking there, but he's.
Oh,
there
Chris,
we go.
you're muted.
The more people that are on the register, the better for the industry.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Agree. Here. Question 20. Will the APS develop any tools that help to create a best practice suite of documents that help a PD manage and discharge their duties? We are currently seeing some very different approaches and documents being employed.
That's a possibility. Whether or not we will develop pro formas has yet to be decided, but it's on the agenda as part of the ongoing discussions that we're having.
Brilliant. Question 21. Look at us, 21 questions so far. Regarding the competency evidence, we work on projects that are classed as sensitive, Ministry of Justice work. Ministry of Justice, yeah. Am I okay to say this in the application with an outline of the process rather than submitting the actual document?
On the individual and assessments that I carry out, I do assess people who work on restricted areas. And again, this is where the interview takes place, and it's fully understood that evidence can't be provided, drawings, etc., and so forth. So that is taken on board by the assessor.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Question 22. Get your selling hat on there, Andrew. What is the benefit of the APS PDBR register over others? For example, the REBA.
I wouldn't like. I was just going to say, we're not going to comment on the other registers. The APS register is open to the industry, and we've had a lot of interest from architects who might otherwise be attracted towards RIBA. Right. The important thing about the APS register, or the important difference, is the RIBA combine the principal designer CDM and principal designer building regulations role into one thing, which is not the route that we've taken. Chris B knows all about this because you've applied to both schemes.
I did indeed, and that's where I was about to come in. Yeah, I'm on both registers. The RIBA register was open much earlier than the APS one, and I'm quite proud of the fact I was one of the first 4 in the country to actually get on the RIBA register. The application process is very similar, apart from the examination, which I've already said a personal opinion that I don't feel it contributed to the process. And the other one, which coming from Yorkshire matters a lot, is that the APS scheme is much cheaper.
Well, what more do you need to know?
We also send a pin-up calendar every year of Andrew. He's an Easter bunny. He's 4th of July. It's fantastic. Question 23. Does the register align with and/or draw upon in any way the UK standard for professional engineering competence and commitment, UK spec?
I can't comment on that. Yeah. Either Chris, can you?
I didn't entirely understand the question there, but again, I know we're repeating yourselves, but the standard that has been provided is the past, and again, the development of the application process, the application form, we spent many hours working on that to get it aligned with the past. And again, the column that we talked about, which is the guidance, and it is guidance. There are alternative ways of doing it. We felt that would help people. Again, going back to the question of the RIBA scheme, again, there was guidance in a separate booklet, but we felt that it was appropriate to put it there on the form as a sort of reminder that's instantly recognisable.
Thank you ever so much. Question 24. Why is there a CDM exam if this is a PDBR register?
Ah, very interesting. The exam relates to applications from non-members and from associate members to demonstrate an awareness level of CDM, because there is a relationship between the principal designer CDM who becomes a designer under the building regulations, and as such needs to liaise with the PD building regulations. So there is a relationship. Clearly, the intention of HSE in putting or using the same terminology under the building regulations in England as used in CDM 2015 was in the hope that one organization would pick up both roles. Therefore, there needs to be an understanding of CDM by the PDBR in order to deliver their role. So we've gone into a bit of detail on this very subject in the webinars that Mark Snelly and I have delivered up to date. So that is why the exam exists. Now, it only doesn't apply to members of APS at IMAPs, CMAPs or fellows, because they have already demonstrated to APS that they have levels of competence in relation to CDM.
Thank you very much. Andrew, question 25. If you do the non-HRB route and pass, if you then want to upgrade to HRB, is it a full application again?
The answer to that is no, but we will need to describe what the process will be in the guidance. Again, I'll just take a note of that, and the working group will clarify that in the guidance.
Thank you ever so much. I'm going to jump through a few. We've only got 7 minutes left and 9 questions, so I'm going to be a little quick now. Question 26. As a company, can we compile the evidence through a company with combined qualifications and experience as a group rather than a single designated person? I believe you were mentioning this earlier on, Andrew, about corporate.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at the question again. Well, the competence scheme is for individuals. Individuals obviously work for for an organization or a company. And therefore that individual, if they're doing work for the company and they use that information as evidence, that's fine and acceptable. The APS is working on an organizational capability scheme, and that is yet to be announced.
But on the register, where an individual has been assessed by APS, the details of the company that that individual worked for will be there on the APS site, won't it, Andrew?
Yep. Yep. What appears in the register is name, company with telephone and email details, the usual sort of stuff that you'd get in a register, plus the region that the individual and company are based in, the APS region that is, plus their inclusion in the register in either non-HRBs with a list of typologies or non-HRBs plus HRBs with typologies in it, in each column. That is described in a temporary register that's on the homepage of the website. And we're hoping that this week or possibly next week, we will have the actual register available to be uploaded in its final format. So that should be viewable on the website very shortly.
Thank you so much. Question 27. Will existing APS members who are on the PDBR register receive a concession for the annual register fee?
What does concession mean? I don't know. No, I think is the answer to that. The register stands separate from membership, and it has its own application and ongoing inclusion registration fee. It is separate from APS membership. What there is a kind of trade-off that APS members applying to be on the register will get a discount, and members of the register who wish to be an APS member, having already gone through a competency process or an assessment process, will not have to go through the same again as part of the membership application, and therefore there is a reduction in the APS application fee.
Thank you so much. Question 28. Are company tools that we've put in place for building regulations compliance tracker, for example, are they acceptable as evidence, even if opportunity to use them has not yet arisen?
The short answer to that is yes.
Fantastic. That's what I like. That's what I like to hear. Okay, so just quickly type. For question 29, can the assessment form, a blank version, be downloaded without application? As it is a new register, the blank form would be really beneficial to allow proposals to organisations, senior management, to see if the benefits of joining the register were worth it. In particular, where organisations are PD and PC already under CDM and will also be under BR. Basically, can we have a blank form so people can see what it looks like?
I wonder which form is being talked about. If this is the application form, it's already blank and on the website. Is this question about a form that the assessors might use? I'm not clear on what's being asked.
I imagine it would be regarding the assessors. So there is access to, just to make it clear to everyone, there is access to a downloadable form that everyone can see. Because I had about 3 questions on that, and I've just deleted them all. That's good. Okay, question 30. Build UK's Common Assessment Standard, CAS, has updated their forms this month to cover PD and PC under the building regs, opening it up to a wider potential applicants like APS. Can the panel offer any comment on why potential applicants use the APS register other than others?
Well, the Common Assessment Standard is the standard that is applied by SSIP. Other than that, I don't have any further comment on this question. Chris, anything? No.
No, I agree with you.
Question 31. The guidance suggests that the application documents will only be stored for 10 weeks, then destroyed. How does this work with regards to reviewing competency every 3 years?
Well, we have to follow the GDPR rules in relation to retaining information. That's confidentiality rules. And so this is part of the APS procedure. It applies to applications for membership as well. The assessment process is at a point in time. The evidence is presented and reviewed, and therefore, once that has happened, there is no need to keep it. The procedure in relation to a 3-yearly review, or a review every 3 years, will be to ensure that the applicant has kept up their competence. And so that will be the method of doing that, and the information required is currently with the working group.
Thank you so much. Question 32. Is the PD Register an assessment of organisations or individuals?
Individuals.
Even I knew that. Come on, guys. And the final question for today, that's 33 questions out of the 45 that were asked, but I limited it down quite significantly because we had the same question quite a lot. The register is a form of evidence to demonstrate competence as a PDBR. I understand that there will be 2 categories, HRB and non-HRB, but will there be different classifications for persons on the register?
No, it's competence within these 2 categories, plus information about the building typologies related to the competence. Brilliant.
Okay, thank you ever so much. So I think we're going to end it there. We've had a fantastic submission of questions there. I've just popped up a little poll. If you wouldn't mind just clicking it, it will take less than 20 seconds just to give us some feedback on whether this type of event is what we're after. So I will leave the final words and goodbyes to young Andrew Leslie. But from me, thank you ever so much. The link to the blank form, Stephen has asked for the link to be provided to access the blank form. Yes, I will follow this email up with a link to the website and the blank form. I'll hand it over to you now, Andrew. Thank you.
Okay, just to wind everything up. Well, thank you to everyone who's attended, and I hope that the responses that we've given will encourage a lot of you to apply to the scheme. My particular thanks to Chris Bracewell and Chris Cooter for joining on the panel and providing their very insightful answers as assessors to the scheme, and of course to Tommy for hosting. So I think that's us for today. So thanks again, and it's goodbye from me.
Thank you, everyone, and it's goodbye from us. Chris Bracewell, Chris Cooter, if you have a quick look in the webinar chat, you'll just see all the lovely comments coming up. Everyone's saying such wonderful things. Callum Bunce, thank you for the Q&A session. Appreciate the additional information. Praveen, thank you. Very useful information. Dennis Murphy, thank you. Very interesting. So we've had a lot of feedback already, which is absolutely fantastic. Again, just on your way out, everyone, just fill in that poll. I will leave it to the Chris's to say their goodbyes.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm just going to